It is the final Friday of the month, and it is, of course, 3 p.m. in the UK, which means it's time for PMI Live. Those of a more observant nature will notice it's August. This is our first ever August episode, and it looks like we've smashed a theory already, which was people won't come to webinars in August because we've got record registrations for our first ever August one. Some of my colleagues have theorized that that's because of the presenter, the lovely Dennis, who will be on very shortly. Others have theorized that it might be because of the subject matter. We would love to hear from you. Let us know about this theory, because one of the things we set out that's in our values is to maximize our positive impact. And delivering these webinars is one of those things that we do. Oh, there we go. We're in already, Dennis, and I hope that wasn't you. Someone saying both of those reasons was was why they're here. Thank you very much. Bribe on its way. So on that note, my name is Rich Seddon, and I am a partner and CEO of PMI. For those of you who don't know me, today I'm in the facilitator's seat. I'll be putting your questions, queries, comments to Dennis as we go through the session. Welcome to anyone joining us on the live streams. It's great to have you with us on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook. If you would like to join the live sessions, you can still register at pmi.co.uk/webinars, and you can jump on into the live session. Dennis does have an exercise, which some of you got a preview of, we believe, earlier in the day when we were rehearsing this webinar. And it looked like the chat was active. So thanks for those that participated. And we do hope that was a useful insight. There is no right or wrong answer, so no one's got an insight if you did miss that chat or an unfair advantage. So without further ado, Dennis, would you like to introduce yourself first? And it's been a few months since we last saw you on PMI Live. Where have you been? What have you been up to?
Hi, so always lovely to be back here at this webinar, Rich. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Dennis Commentine-Marsh. I'm a director consultant with PMI and also head of data analytics and insights. In the last few months, I've been working with a few lovely clients. With one, I'm on an interim basis, which is delightful, supporting governance and assurance around portfolio management of projects, which is absolutely joyful.
Much presentation of data progress, etc. in that project, Dennis?
Every week.
Okay.
So it's all about how do we tell the stories, especially to the executive leadership team, to draw meaningful conclusions for calls to actions to support all the projects.
Okay. Thank you. So before we step into the content specifically for today, I always like to set a bit of context around this and why we choose these topics that we choose. I mean, the first reason is from our Voice of the Customer surveys that we put out, both for these and all courses and training and events that we run. We asked the simple question: what topics would you like to see in the next PMI Live? And this kept coming up, so we decided to challenge ourselves and put it on in August and build it and see if anyone came. And so enough you are here, so great to have you with us. And it is that feedback fundamentally that leads on and spurs onto the ideas and concepts, and we put them together into titles and then form the presentations. But this is a key topic for us. I mean, from all of our client work, both in the training sphere and the consulting side, the presentation of progress, of results, of findings, of good news, of bad news is something that's common to very many jobs and very many professions these days. However, in our observation, one of the things that often doesn't happen is formal training and development in the art of presentations. There are courses out there, and some people indeed do. If you have conducted a course or taken part in a course, we'd love to hear from you in the chat. Please do put your comments, your thoughts. What was good about that? Has it been useful? Were there weaknesses in that? Let us know during the live session, and I'll feed that into Dennis to keep him on his toes, but also just get some perspectives for where we are. So just before we do that, I couldn't possibly, with less than 4 weeks to go, not mention our Goals to Results conference. Stand by, folks. It's coming multiple times. It's less than 4 weeks to go. The last few places are now available. We've had a real surge in bookings in the last few weeks, and the attendance is looking fantastic. The agenda's looking even better. that we've got industry leaders, guest speakers, roundtables, no less than 9 expert workshops that you can break out into. And it is all happening at the University of Warwick, which is smack in the middle of England. And tickets are available on the link that is in the chat currently, or you can scan one of these QR codes. So I've got the right side. There we go. It's there. So we'd love to see you there. We're really, really excited about it, and it's going to be a knock it out the park event. So the more the merrier. You're very welcome. Please do register now. Dennis, on that note, that was a long intro, wasn't it? Apologies. Would you like to take us through what you're going to cover today?
Absolutely. So, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. The first and most important question when you start any presentation virtually, can they see your screen? Yeah, so you're not talking to a blank screen. So, for those who have been on previous webinars, you will straight away notice a difference in layout and design. So, what we'll cover today is a small experiment, first of all. Then I'm going to talk about 3 of my favorite methods for delivering presentation impact. Talk about psychological safety, which is increasingly a hot topic within large organizations, and finally a conclusion by the end. So before we start, I mean, you may know this model. If you're a Greenwell practitioner, you will definitely know this model. The GIT model. To deliver, in this case, a presentation impact, there's 3 dimensions to consider. Number 1, what we do. Number 2, how we do it. And the third one, how we feel about it. So if we use this structure in terms of the context of today, very often somebody comes to you and says, I want you to deliver a presentation. But this is now the key question, by which method? I'll only come back to your point, Richard, that earlier you said that many people had no formal training presentations. I mean, interestingly, both my daughters, I remember primary school, they had to do PowerPoints as part of their primary school education. So they've grown up naturally with this, but I'm not sure if they've ever had formal training in it. I would love to know from one of them, I believe is attending. So do feel free to let me know if you actually ever had formal training in this. And then the final point is, how do we now ensure that we get the best out of our attendees during our presentation? Because of course, the purpose of presentation is often threefold. Either it's to share information, 2, it is to do an exploration, or 3 is to come up with a decision. And therefore, depending on the audience, of course, you need to figure out what's the best way of getting them the key points across.
Yeah, and it's an interesting dimension to think about there, because in my observation, occasionally people view presentations as, how do I tell them what they need to know? And I think the way you've posed that question, Dennis, is really interesting. How do we get the best out of the attendees during the presentation? That's their feedback, their participation. And I'm assuming you would include in that the knowledge or decision, the knowledge you wish to impart, or the decision or conclusion you wish them to arrive at would form part of that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how often have you been to presentations and you got no idea what's going on? Why am I here? Yeah. And what do you want me to do? So this call to action is often missing. So we're going to talk about all these elements in this webinar. So first of all, let's do an experiment with the audience. So audience, if you can open up the chat window, and in a minute, I'm going to ask you a question. And in the chat window, if you'd be kind enough to enter the answer. The activity is as follows. On the next page, I'm going to show you dots. All you have to do is, when the dots are revealed, is stick the number of dots that you see on the screen in the chat. What I will do, I'll use my timer on my phone, stopwatch, to see how long it takes for the first person to enter the right number. And progressive.
And a tip on that, in order to be ready for it, have your cursor over the send button in Teams, so you don't need to find where your mouse is currently lurking. So you should have the cursor flashing next to type a message. What Dennis is asking you to do is put the number of dots that you can see on screen into the chat and hit send. Not too taxing, with a bit of luck.
So Teams, are you ready? the first number of dots. And I will just open the chat now so I can see it as well. So here's the first number of dots. 3, 2, 1. Wow.
Lightning.
Fantastic. 2.46 seconds. Yeah. Which is, remember, take into account, this is when I see it. This is not when you counted it, this is when I saw it. Yeah. So you saw it far faster than that. Now, the typical delay time on this is 2 seconds. That means most of you saw it in 0.5 seconds. So next set of dots. 3, 2, 1. Okay, very similar, about 3.2 seconds. So slightly longer, but still lightning fast. If you think about it, about 0.7 seconds in total. Okay, next one. Wow, someone was incredibly fast there. That was, again, 3 seconds flat. And now the last one, guys, then I'm going to stop. So 3, 2, 1. Come on, hurry up. Ah, there we go. So that took 5.5 seconds for me to receive the information. So -2, about 3.5 seconds. So what's going on? Of course, so thank you all for participating in this experiment, especially the last person who said 12 explanation mark. Some of you didn't get quite right. Oh,
there's 10s and 14s and 13s in there, which is interesting.
So thank you all for participating in this small experiment. So what's going on? First of all, there's these two ways of thinking. This came from Daniel Kahneman, thinking fast and slow, and he spoke about system 1 and system 2 thinking. System 1 thinking, the brain, anywhere up to 6/7 dots, the brain can instantly recognize that number of elements on the screen without the need to count. Typically, if you were in a live environment, it's less than 0.5 seconds. So this is unconscious, low energy, automatics. That means therefore lightning fast, instinctive, but also emotional reaction, fight, flight, freeze. The second type of thinking, which is called system 2 thinking, when you have more than 7 dots on the screen, the brain has now engaged a different part, which means more energy has to be expended by the brain, and more than 2 seconds will be taken for the brain to come up with the answer. That is 4 times slower. Think about that. 4 times slower than type 1 thinking. So type 2 thinking, conscious, uses more energy, takes effort, and therefore it takes more time. It is therefore more logical often, but also a benefit of threshold thinking is more rational in the here and now. So we need both of these ways of thinking. But when we're talking about delivering presentations with impact, what we want to do is minimize cognitive loads. We want to minimize paralysis by the information that's presented to us. And that means, therefore, that what we need to use in this context is not let the number of slides dictate the amount of information that we convey, but the opposite. Let the amount of information dictate how many slides we will have to get it across easily and digest it nicely.
Dennis, I've just been struck by the irony. I've put a link in while you were talking about cognitive overload in a presentation. I put a link in to the book you were referencing, and it struck me. This wasn't rehearsed, by the way, folks. this made me think here. How often do we do that especially in Teams meetings? When someone's presenting, we'll put comments in, we'll put links in to things whilst they're talking. And immediately I felt myself, as I was looking up the Amazon link, and I put it in there for you, immediately thinking, there's cognitive overload right there. I've just distracted the audience from quite a critical point. So apologies for doing that, folks. I didn't do it to prove the point, but I think I just did.
And I mean, I do want to build on that. Increasingly now with easy access to information, for example, watching a film, who is that actor? You Google them straight away. You find out about them, whether in a film or that's what I recognize it from, etc.
How old is Glenn Close? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Who's Glenn Close?
Just carry on.
But it's that, isn't it? We are now more comfortable with accessing multiple sources of information, but back to delivering presentation impact, is it useful or not? So we need to keep that audience engaged. So let's talk about my first of my three favorite tools: clarity, brevity, and impact. It's one of the best things I ever did in my life, is attend a course on this, and how to get messages across simply and cleanly. Now, the art of storytelling in threes is nothing new. Aristotle came up with it, more than, 1,500 years ago. No, more or less 1,400. 1,200. My maths have gone. Doesn't matter. We are developing impact here with a few issues of maths in here. So what he spoke about is this, which we all know: beginning, middle, and end. And within this beginning, middle, end, there's three dimensions to consider. First of all, keep the scope narrow. So whatever you're presenting, keep it focused on that point. Secondly, whatever medium you're choosing, so PowerPoint is probably the single most common way in business, at least, to convey information to others. Consider strengths and limitation of that medium. And we'll come back to some of those issues which are built into the most commonly used tool, which is Microsoft PowerPoint. And finally, whatever you're discussing, don't over-explain. If people do want to know more, have a second meeting or a follow-up, but in that area, in that limited time you often got, especially with executive leaders, keep that focus, keep the scope narrow. So here's an example of beginning, middle, and end. First of all, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to talk about. In the middle, now this is what I'm talking about, and by the end, this is what I've just talked about. Exactly how we structure these webinars.
And it's often corrupted that as well, isn't it? 'Cause, people start by, here's what I'm going to talk about, dive straight into the detail, and here's what you must take away or must know about it. It's simply not how the human brain works, and being disciplined with this, it can sound like you're repeating it, but actually gives opportunity for people to reflect on the content that you are presenting, and ask questions of clarification. Particularly up front, here's what I'm going to talk about. Does that include ... And when you do, it's amazing the change. It's the simple shift in conversation that comes about.
Absolutely. And this can also be used not just in presentation, but also in a conversation. Somebody asks you something about a topic where you're not quite sure how to answer it. Using this structure of three can actually help you to give your brain the time to answer. You just asked me about Glenn Close. So, how old is he? So this one I'm now going to talk about. Now you talk about this thing. And I said, what I've just spoken about is the age of Glenn Close. I'm sure, can somebody please Google this and stick it in the chat?
If I was reading the faces of our technical assistants correctly, that's exactly what they were just laughing about a few moments ago. We're just off screen. Yes, I can see you folks.
Yeah. So, yeah. But just using the structure of three can give you time to think before you speak. Thank you very much, person, unknown verified user 77.
77 is the answer. Marvelous.
Thank you. Thank you. So here's some more structures. For example, in this presentation, we're going to talk about the current state, desired state, and how do we get there, or problem, solution, benefits, past, present, future. Or if you're familiar with our 3-question model, what are we trying to accomplish? How do you know the change and improvement? And what changes can we test for result improvement? So structure it in threes. And as Rich knows, whenever I send anything to him these days, it's always in threes. Now, if you have more than 3 things, create a substructure beneath it. Three key points, then 3 sub points, and even sub points. But give it a clean structure, and try not to go beyond that. Keep the messages clean and simple. So clarity, brevity, impact.
Yeah, no, Dennis, you taught me this many years ago, and I use it, as you know, regularly as well, and I advise other people to use it. I find it really interesting how often people struggle with it because they feel like they're letting go of of information or vital points. But your essential point here is that it falls into irrelevance anyway, because it will be lost because people are listening to the 3 things. It works.
It just does. And that's the thing to consider It's not what you know about it, but what is useful to share with your audience
Yeah.
for the purposes of that presentation. It's
Yeah.
always separating the two.
Yeah.
You're there for one reason, because you know everything about something. That's why you are presenting. The skill now is, how do you get it across elegantly? So this is called, the thinking in threes. The next one is something that, especially this year, I've been fine tuning. And this is called the Minto pyramid, which came from a lady called Barbara Minto, a management consultant. So how this came about for me, at least, is that I'm doing some conceptual work for a client. The client is extremely senior in the organization, and I started to explain things as follows. And you may recognize this. Yeah. Context, background, detail, research. I did this, I did that. My client starts to look at the wash, and you can see starting to shift uncomfortably. Lots of details and reasons. And here is my answer to your question. Now, this is not my client. This is a photo I found. Yeah. They've disappeared. I lost the engagement with them during my logical sequencing of the telling of what I'd done for this executive leader. So what's going wrong here? So first of all, too much detail in the beginning because I'm telling the story chronologically. Secondly, impatience by the audience. They're starting to tune out because they gave you a task and they say, well, when are you going to give us the answer to the exam question? And finally, of course, because now they have time to think and they start becoming comfortable, what may happen, yeah, is either fault finding or finding things within that, or going off on a tangent. None of these are useful to them creating a impact or action. So what do you do instead? Very simply, turn it around. For those who like Tris, rule number 13. Yeah. So the Minter principle that Barbara came up with is as follows. First of all, start with a purpose, a very concise problem statement, and then straight away the recommendation. Answer the exam question within the first 2 pages, 3 pages max. Now the executive leader can relax a little bit more because you've given them an answer. Now we can go into this collaborative thinking with them, say, okay, now what sits behind it? Supporting data, facts, or uncertainties, risks, assumptions, etc. Once you've done that, the thing that you must do, power of 3, is finish off with either a call to action or agree next steps, which may be, we need another follow-up meeting. Always finish with a follow-up, yeah? So don't leave it just at this level here. Always a call to action on next steps. Just by structuring your presentations this way, it actually helps also a lot of people, especially at executive level, which are big picture thinking. Tell me the big picture and only then go into the detail. Very often, especially I'm going to talk about scientists in particular, because you're in the detail and that's your strength, it may be difficult, uncomfortable to talk big picture. So that's a skill to develop.
Just to add a personal perspective to that, Dennis, looking at this detail, I couldn't agree more. And it's so often we go straight into the middle section, that blue section, and more so, I notice people not confirming why the purpose up front. And never ceases to amaze me how many people turn up to meetings, never mind lead meetings, but turn up to meetings for which no purpose has been expressed. Sometimes there's a vague title. And how often? You catch up. Yes, oh, there's a good one. Catch up rather than catch up. But let's face it may as well be either. And then we're all surprised when meetings take forever. Everyone gets distracted. We don't actually achieve anything. This is really simple in terms of its structure, but it's ignored so often. Have you any theories as to why that might be the case? Why isn't this just natural? Isn't this just what everyone does? I put you on the spot there with that question, but it occurred to me whilst I was talking.
I think it comes back to, one, we've never been trained in this, or not many of us have been trained in how to deliver a presentation, how to deliver a set of information.
Okay.
If you think about your classical report you may have written at school or university, or in other contexts, it always starts with detail, conclusion at the end. Now, what you may see for those who become a bit more evolved in this, there's an executive summary at the top or an abstract. And that's exactly the purpose, is that headline. Newspapers are actually really quite good at this, or used to be, at least when they were written properly, is the key headlines at the top, then straight away the key message, and only then in the detail. I think we've lost the art of this particular structure of telling for multiple reasons.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So so this is called the Minto pyramid. Yeah.
And to avoid any cognitive overload, I'm now sharing the link to Barbara Minto's book, should anyone require it.
Which means for the next 10 seconds, we've slightly lost a few people, huh? To go on to and buy the book or whatever.
Got a couple of observations come in here, Dennis. So one, we made a change regarding this by giving each meeting a leader a template, which caused them to answer some key questions such as purpose, who should attend, etc. Great. Yeah, and talking about McKinsey training their people in Minto presentation format, indeed. And I don't think people take the time to reflect on what they want from a meeting or presentation. Could not agree more. And if you go back to Dennis's previous slides, yeah, that's absolutely true. As a matter the very first one in terms of the hamburger model, the give model, with what do you want out of your attendees?
Absolutely. And back to the point, I think one of them made, Barbara was a former McKinsey consultant, if not a partner. So indeed. So yeah. The last of my three favorite things is called words and tables. Those of you remember when I spoke about the introduction, I showed you straight away what we're going to cover in that format. So John Moon, a British journalist and writer, back in 2007 came up with a way of changing the way by which we convey information in any type of document. He also, in this particular book, he went beyond, of course, the written word, also to graphs, tables, etc. So again, I highly recommend this book. I'm not sure it's available, at least the one I've got was secondhand. I'm not sure if it's still in print as such.
There's new and used available on Amazon.
So, so rule number one, no bullet points. What I mean by bullet points is this thing here, this little dot. Remember I said at the beginning of this presentation, spoke about PowerPoint is not necessarily a useful way of creating it because it's guiding you automatically to use bullet points.
Yeah, insert new slide starts with flashing bullet point, even though it is grayed out first of all. As soon as you start typing, it's to a bullet point on most templates.
So Dan, the second rule he came up with is instead alt text in this table. So the way I start with a visible table, stick it all in, and then I make the table invisible. So remove all the lines. Ensure key messages are in a larger bold font. So back to also this minimizing cognitive overload is have the headlines in a bold font and then the details in a smaller font. And finally, the use of horizontal lines. Now, what do horizontal lines do on a piece of paper? The eye bounces between them. It gives the eye structure to follow. So whenever you have a presentation where there's no horizontal lines, the eyes can drift off. So the use of horizontal lines is just that. So let me give you an example. So as you heard Rich speak about, in a few weeks' time, we have a conference.
We've got a conference. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Is that this here? That's it.
So this is one way we could lay out this information. Quite classical. This would be a standard way of this information to be presented in PowerPoint. And now I have to spend a long time reading it, digest it, and figure out actually what are the key things to take away from this. So let me now offer the second one, and I would love to hear from the audience here to say which one do you prefer. You may really like this one. Or how about this one? Just have a read through this.
I mean, it's such a simple example, this, but it is profound in the ability to absorb that information. And also, for me, I pick out the things that are of interest by using the bold text to navigate. Networking opportunities. Okay, what's that about? Right. Yeah, works really well.
So, yeah, thank you very much.
Some positive responses to that. Some positive responses. What's that? You've just booked. Excellent. Good for you.
So yeah. So what this does, it still conveys the same amount of information. Thank you. With thinking about the headlines there, it draws the eye in, which also means for the impatient reader, back again to the executive leader with impact, if they are time poor, but you still need to get message across, all they may do is they may just scan the stuff on the left. And like you said, Rich, actually, I really enjoy that thing about network opportunities. Now I go to the right, smaller font, more detail.
And how many of us have spent how much of our lives with presentations that look like the one on the left as well? Well, actually, it's almost an attention test to try and pick out the information from that. And yes, you can use the reveal as you step through, but the ability to have everything, you don't need animations with that on the right at all. It's just there in front of you. You can pick it through and talk, and it still lends itself to meaningful discussion. And also stops, for me, it also prevents the, are you going to cover? Yes, I am, because you can see it all.
Yeah. Yeah. On the left-hand side, we can miss key bits of information. What is this about workshop? Are you going to do that? Yeah. Bullet point 2. Well, how many? Well, it's in there. Can't you read it? Well, actually. Yeah. So absolutely. So words and tables, my top tip. So whether it's your CV, whether it is a exploration document in Word, whether it is, of course, presentation, consider this words and tables structure within that to help to guide the audience to maximum impact.
And I will share the link to John Moon's book. There are some used copies available on Amazon, fairly pricey, but pretty good text, maybe worth the investment. Had another comment in, Dennis, and the second option here is helpful if you want to revisit the slides to be able to find what you need without needing to remember which bullet point or page it is. Yeah, absolutely. And it's using that headline principle, isn't it? Earlier on today, I was working with a colleague on a summary of a major consulting project that we've been working on, and it's going in front of the CEO this afternoon. Slightly less preparation time than I'd have liked, but pressure's a good thing sometimes. But we used this structure, exactly this structure, to express the key things, the key asks of the project, and then the detail in the right was where we've got to in terms of the progress with the project. So very quickly you can say on this work stream 1, 2, 3, 4, here's the detail, and you can see it's super clean.
So yes, so it sounds daft. It just works. It just works, and it works for those who like to read, but also for those who have challenges with reading or attention span challenges.
And it really isn't very much. It really isn't very much more effort to do either. And if anything, as the author, it helps you think through your points more clearly. You're not just writing to bullet points. You're writing an explanation to your headline.
Yeah. Now, the one thing to remember, if this is in the PowerPoint, very often this does need a narrative, often to bring out more detail, but that's fine. That's what the narrative is for, the dialogue is for. Yeah. So those are 3 of my favorite things. I've just told you what I spoke about. I'm now go to the final topic, which is about creating an atmosphere of psychological safety. So impression management is really easy. I don't know if you ever been in meetings like this, but no one wants to look ignorant, incompetent, intrusive, or negative. And it's so easy to do in that meeting. Just don't ask any questions, or don't admit to a weakness or mistake. Don't offer ideas. Don't challenge the status quo. And I'm not saying this as a negative, by the way. It's actually very natural, almost instinctive, to protect the self, especially if you've been heard in previous meetings, been told off. You know, what did you say that for? Why did you say that? How did you dare to say that? And the question therefore is, does it actually get in the way of learning and growth? So we need to change something around this, because impression management is easy. Yeah, just be quiet, say nothing. Somebody else will sort it out. Impression management therefore takes a back seat when there is this psychological safety. Now, what does psychological safety mean? So I'll read it out verbatim. A belief that the context is safe for interpersonal risk-taking, and therefore speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or constructive feedback will be welcomed and valued. We create this microcosmos, this space where people can say what they believe is useful for learning, growth, improvement. So how do you go about this? I'll share with you 3 steps. Step number 1, set the stage. 2, invite engagement. 3, respond appreciatively. By the way, this is quite nice, of course. In this smart art, very often, it does kind of convey the same key elements of key messages and key points. And what you notice here, of course, each of the 3 points have 3 subpoints. Yeah, so set the stage. Back to what we said earlier, purpose, expectations, and ground rules, i.e., feel free to ask questions at any time or by the end, or we'll take note of your questions. Invite engagement, so acknowledge the limits within what you're saying or your limits of your understanding. That means actually you're offering a slight vulnerability to say, I recognize I don't know everything. I appreciate if you're able to help me on some of these points. So ask good questions of your participants, but also invite good questions. So again, delegates of this beautiful webinar, do come up with some great questions for us around your own experience. What have you noticed around when presentations don't go well?
And confidence and nervousness plays a part here, doesn't it? Particularly in the center. I think 1 and 2, 1 and 3 less so, but the inviting engagement. I mean, sometimes, let's face it, who wants questions? They might be tricky, and if you're feeling nervous and uncomfortable, either with your audience or with your content, and that could be a particular issue. Any thoughts on how to think that through, Dennis?
Absolutely. So if there's a situation where you're not comfortable to answer questions in the moment, get them to write them down. We can use Teams, we can use chat, we can use a virtual whiteboard or any other written format post the meeting.
Okay.
That gives you as a presenter time to think, reflect, and respond appropriately to those questions. Back to type 1, type 2 thinking. If you're in the moment, you may respond using system 1 thinking, which may be emotional and not necessarily the right response. But give yourself the time to breathe. It becomes rational in the here and now. So again, disconnect the asking of the question to you responding.
Okay.
Yeah. So the last one, therefore, is respond appreciatively on the right-hand side. Embrace the messenger. Anybody gives feedback, learn to love them, cherish the messenger, whether it's good feedback or negative feedback, constructive motivation, deep motivation, it doesn't matter. Cherish them. They took the effort, the energy to say something. So always say thank you, even if you personally disagree with how it was said, what was said, etc. It doesn't matter. Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. Welcome the feedback more. So always say, as you know me, whenever I create, especially concept documents, they're perfectly imperfect. Feedback is always welcome. So foster that culture of learning with your team members. I will give you now a method to help with that. So first of all, ask for permission to say, hey, can I tell you what's on my mind? Is this a good time to offer feedback to you on this? The other person may then say yes or no. Yeah, there's a good time, not a good time. Or please, can we do it tomorrow? Or can you do it in writing to me? Give me some chance to reflect on it. So first of all, seek out that permission. Is this a good time? Also on my mind. And then we go through the following 3 steps: action, impact, do. In action, describe the specific situation about which you wish to give feedback. Once you've done that, then think about the impact that situation is presenting to you. Yeah, so not about other people, we believe or we think, we feel, I think. This is the impact it's having on me. So make sure it's between you and the other person, whatever the situation is all about. And finally, the call to action. So don't just stop here and say, hey, what you just did, I didn't like, yeah, or I don't like this or that. Make sure there's always a follow-up from that. Now, the follow-up can be what's called motivational or developmental feedback. Motivation was, this was a brilliant presentation, a brilliant conference. The impact was, I've learned a lot. Please organize one again. Developmental could be, hey, this piece of work you just done, it didn't actually answer the exam question I set to you. So please spend some time now to rethink and come up with a different answer. So this method just works. It feels a bit mechanistic in the beginning when you first start to think about it, but the more you start to practice this, it will help. And especially it can shut down the system 1 thinking, the emotional response. Just having the thinking structure in your head gives you time and space to breathe, if you breathe, of course, and therefore give that feedback. So, importance of failure, yeah. PDSA, plan, do, study, act, and action. So within all of this, of course, we want to get it as right as possible, but fail often in order to succeed sooner. Yeah. So don't be shy of having something that's not quite perfect, but then work on it to make it better and better and better. You then decide when you do that presentation with impact to your audience. The last one, my words, create something perfectly imperfect. Yeah, it can always be improved. So 2 questions for our audience. Consider these, self-reflect on this. When you're working in a team, how can you as an individual respond to promote openness and learning? And secondly, if you're the leader of a team or department, etc., how do you create conscious moments to display effective leadership around this topic of psychological safety? So make them conscious decisions. Excellent. So Rich, this is where we've come to the end of what I wanted to share about delivering with impact. So I'm now going to continue to my summary.
Excellent.
So plan and prepare. Consider the audience, etc. Concision is key. Concise. Concision, English word? Concise.
I think that's a Dennisism. Yeah.
Concise is key. Be clear on the purpose of whatever you're conveying to them. Just one point on that, and I think you said it. Recently, I had a lot of work that I did for somebody, and I just put in there the first slide. I believe this was the purpose, wasn't it? And actually, we spent the majority of the meeting on that one slide. So actually, it wasn't quite right. There were more dimensions I hadn't considered. So just make sure, whatever it is, and I'm just going to repeat what you said. If you have a meeting invite with somebody, stick a purpose in it, not just catch up one-to-one, coffee, whatever. Give them something to prepare and think about. Minimize cognitive overload. Create a safe environment, safe working environment. And finally, at the bottom, be comfortable with failure, concision. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Perfectly perfect is perfectly okay.
Yes, but don't make things up. That's, I think, is the moral of that story, Dennis. Thank you. Excellent. Thanks so much, Dennis. That was fantastic. If you could jump onto the next slide for me, that would be fantastic. So I think I might have mentioned this throughout. On the 25th September, less than 4 weeks to go. Please do join us if you haven't registered already, or even if you'd like to chat through. We've got Marvin Cook, the former head of manufacturing for Toyota Europe, who'll be in conversation with myself. That is an open mic session where anyone can ask Marvin questions. He has just retired. I would strongly encourage you to take advantage of that moment in time. And his candor and his reflections of 30 years in Toyota are fascinating, and we'll be handing the mics over to the audience on that one. So for that reason alone, I'd encourage you to come. Right, enough of me on that subject, Dennis. I think I've made my point. If you could jump to the next slide, that'd be fantastic.
Just Rich, out of interest, that last chat message, would you mind reading that out loud for me, please? Me as a poor foreigner who doesn't speak English perfectly.
I have not seen it. Concision is a noun that means the quality or state of being concise or the act of eliminating redundancy in communication. Well, that was a redundant piece of communication. Thank you, Dennis. Excellent. Next slide, please. Marvelous. Thank you very much, and thank you whoever put that in. I do hope it was one of my colleagues. So just a reminder of the Knowledge Hub. All of our content you will find on there. That includes the recordings of PMI Live. It includes our podcast series, 2 main podcast series, which are the Leading for Business Excellence series, which this month we have an episode with Jamie Bone from Chevron Group. Really interesting take on risk management and improvement. And then you've got the Uncommon Sense series, which is short, 15 minutes with our own consultants, each one on an individual tool or topic. There you go, Dennis, you're on talking about communicating results with impact. All available on the Knowledge Hub now, pmi.co.uk. So on that note, thank you very much for everyone for joining us. It is, as you probably can sense, our pleasure to deliver these things on a Friday afternoon. We really do enjoy it, and we love having you with us. We thank you for the feedback, most of it. And we will look forward to seeing you next time for PMI Live. Thanks, folks. Take care.
Bye-bye.